When my wife died 4 years ago, she had 2 properties and a bunch of stuff, no will, no living trust. But hey, I'm a real estate broker, 30 years. I've been with a lot of clients in wills, divorces, trusts, all that stuff. This can't be that difficult, can it? Wrong. It was horrible. Biggest mistake I've ever made. I have Kelley Way here, estate planning attorney. She does wills and trusts, and just to ease my guilt, who are some other people that made the same mistake I did?
There are many people who have made mistakes with their estate planning. It is not uncommon at all. In fact, depending on which survey you follow, there's more than half the American population has no will of any kind. There are lots of mistakes out there, and there are lots of people who have made them. For example, Marilyn Monroe had a 39-year probate. She also had to pay about 50% of her estate in estate taxes. You also have Elvis Presley, who paid 73% of his estate in estate taxes. So that would be, he was worth $10 million, about $7 million went to the IRS. And, $3 million is not bad for an inheritance, but when you think that, his daughter could have gotten all 10 if he had planned properly, that's a lot of money to leave on the table.
I don't feel so bad. I still do, but anyway. So, Kelley, one thing that really caught me on your website is you made the statement, making plans for a secure future.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that just spells out what you and I and everyone should think about doing with every financial decision we make.
So estate plan, as the name implies, it is creating a plan for what's going to happen when the inevitable occurs. When you die, or maybe you're still around but you're not able to make decisions. I help you to put a plan in place so that when those things do occur, there is a plan and other people know what the plan is and they can just step in and implement it. It makes things so much easier when the people that have to take over know what they're supposed to be doing.
There's a lot of mistakes you can make once you even make your estate plan.
Oh, yes.
So what are some of the biggest mistakes people make with their estate planning?
Let's see, some big mistakes. One of them is not funding your trust. A lot of people don't quite understand what a trust is or what purpose it serves. So a trust, it's like a corporation in the sense that it owns property, and if it owns the property, it's not part of your estate. So that's how you stay out of probate. So you have to actually put things into your trust. That's how it works and how it avoids probate. And a lot of people either don't realize that that's a step. They think they're done when they sign everything, or they know they need to do it, but they never actually get around to it, which is what happened to Michael Jackson. He actually did all the work. He put together a will, a trust, all of it, but he never funded his trust, so he still had to do probate.
Also, I noticed that when you do a refinance, sometimes the lenders will ask you to go in and out. I'm guessing people forget to go back in.
Yes,
things like that.
It's very common. Most mortgage companies will want you to pull the house out of the trust before they'll refinance it. And then you have the issue where it's got to get back in. That's a part that sometimes they'll help you with, but often they don't. And you'll forget about it, and then you'll have the issue. If you had said in your trust that that's where your property is supposed to go, it's supposed to be in the trust, but then you pull it out later, you run the risk that a court might say, well, they didn't intend for it to be in the trust because they pulled it back out. So that can create a big issue, and that's a problem that happens a lot, where you might have to actually go to court to get that settled.
Messes up the whole purpose of the trust.
Exactly.
So what's another mistake that people make?
Let's see, another mistake. A lot of people, they will create their trust, they'll create their will, and then they'll just assume that they are done, and they will sit on it for 10, 20, 30 years, maybe even forget that they have it. So when it's finally implemented, it's just terribly outdated. Maybe the laws are different, so it's hard to enforce. Maybe the circumstances, a lot can change in 20 or 30 years. So the circumstances when you created the first one could be very, very different. That's what happened to Whitney Houston. She first created her trust when her daughter was about a year old. and she had a much, much smaller estate when she created it. So the terms that she had for her daughter, who was in her 20s at the time that she died, it was just not at all suitable for the child or for the circumstances.
Now, is it, I'm thinking like most people, like you said, they forget about your trust and then they die. Is it ever come to you that people don't even know that their parents actually had a living trust and they don't even know how to find it? Or
That can be a problem. They might not know there is one, so they might go to probate and not realize that a trust exists, or they could find one later and they could say, "Oh, you know what? Sorry, Judge, it looks like there is a trust. Can we just, wrap this up?" Haven't actually had that happen to me, so I'm not quite sure what a judge would do, but I'm sure that it's happened.
I know it happens like in life insurance. See people have life insurance, and unless the heirs know that's there, they find it. That's why insurance companies have the tallest buildings in the world.
Yeah.
Except for
yeah.
maybe like the tech buildings now are probably.
Yeah, the government actually has a place where they kind of hold money that's been unclaimed, for example, from life insurance and things like that. I forget what the link is, but I remember my grandmother found she had a life insurance policy from her mother that had been sitting there for 50 or 60 years that had never been cashed out, and she actually was able to claim it. So going back to the part about what if they can't find it, I remembered the story that I was thinking of with Florence Griffith Joyner, the Olympic gold medalist. That happened with her estate, where her husband insisted that she put an estate plan together, that she had a trust, but he could not find it. It was never found, and so her estate had to go through probate. You have to actually produce the document in order for it to be effective.
Well, I know as a real estate broker, we have access to public records, and it will show, Bob Jones, TR or something like that, so there's probably a trust.
But if you can't find it, how do you know what the trust says?
Then how do you get the property out of the trust if you can't find what the trust says?
That's the problem.
So make copies and keep them and send them.
Yeah, exactly. You want to have copies. Most lawyers will keep a copy if for exactly that kind of circumstance, so that there's a copy somewhere. Of course, when your lawyer retires, then you have an issue of figuring out what they did with it.
Yeah.
Let's see. So, in addition to you need to update your trust on a regular basis, you also want to make sure that you keep your life insurance and your retirement beneficiaries up to date, because those are not controlled by the trust or the will. Those are all run by contract, so the contract is what controls. There have been cases where someone would say in their will, for example, I don't want my ex-wife getting my life insurance policy, so I want my life insurance policy to go to my kids. And then there'll be a court battle saying, well, the will says the life insurance policy goes to the kids. And the court has said, well, that's tough because he didn't update his beneficiary, and that's what controls. So ex-wife gets the money.
One of the biggest things I see in real estate is the emotional side. Especially like in estate battles. I mean, it just comes out of the woodwork. The people, like I said, in my little divorce book, we cut this cut by the way, I said, blood is thicker than water, right? Well, then I came out some years ago, money is thicker than blood. So when the money's on the table, relatives, all that really just disappears.
There's so much of that happens, unfortunately, very frequently.
And then also, I took it one step and said, anger and hatred is thicker than the money. When people say, I don't care about the money, I hate him. I'll die before he gets a dime. That's pretty much what'll happen. You're going to die before anybody gets a dime. It's going to be a long bloody fight. So, anyway.
A lot of times it's much more about the emotions than it is about the money, frankly, especially in estate battles or family law estate battles. That tends to be much more about the emotions than about the money.
And that really gets in the way.
It does. People stop being rational because it's not about logic, or it's not about what the money is, or even about fairness. It's about whatever emotional issues they're having to deal with. I actually know a litigator who says that sometimes he thinks of himself as a very expensive therapist.
Well, we could probably go on all day about all this stuff. So anyway, before you make mistakes like I did, Marilyn and Elvis, contact Kelley Way. and get it right from the first place, it'll save you years. My wife died 4 years ago, and I'm still reeling over the battle over the estate with her kids. She had 5 daughters. One slipped in with the will, deathbed will, a transfer of her properties to herself. One daughter who didn't need the money took it all, and it was just a nightmare. And it could have been saved a couple hours with Kelley.